afternoon, everyone. We're thrilled to have Miss Varsha Seshan with us today. She's a renowned author known for engaging books like The Storycatcher and The Prophecy of Resphora, which has captivated many young readers. Beyond writing, Miss Seshan is passionate about nurturing a love for storytelling amongst children and young adults. Today, we'll explore her journey as a writer and her advice for young authors. Miss Session, thank you for being with us today. How are you, and how has this experience at Ruh and this literature festival been for you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. It's been lovely and thank you for that very warm welcome. My experience at RU has been incredible. I've interacted with practically the whole school because I haven't interacted with the little ones, but other than that, grade 3 to grade 11, it's been a lovely experience here, sharing stories, sharing writing, conducting writing workshops. It's been lovely.
Fantastic. Well, to start things off today, what inspired you to become a writer?
A lot of things inspired me to become a writer. I think the first thing would be that I read so much as a child. My parents had lots and lots of books. Both of them bought a lot of books as well, right through my childhood. I had memberships to several libraries, prominently the British Library. And we used to go there and we could, even though it was the other end of town, we used to go there, borrow, I think, 14 books at a time and read them all and then go back there maybe in 14 days or fewer and return these books. So we read a lot as children. And when I say we, I mean my sister and I, as well as my parents. So that was the first step. I think the second step would have been the fact that the librarian at my school, she encouraged writing. So we used to write stories. And I remember a friend and I put together a collection of short stories when we were in grade 4. And when we were leaving school after grade 10, she still had that collection handwritten and
Hmm.
kept in the library. And I think things like that really make an impact on you and make you continue writing.
You said you read a lot of books when you were young. What are some of the books that you can enlighten us with today that really, you know,
made an impact on me. I think I used to read things that were available to me easily. So, writers that I read a lot when I was young were, for example, Enid Blyton, because she was so prolific and there were so many books that were easily available to us. Books like those written by Roald Dahl were much more expensive, less accessible, but I adored his books. I really liked what he wrote. And I used to read pretty much anything that I could. So I read writers like Eva Ibbotson, Dick King-Smith, a lot of British writers, thanks to the British Library. I read very little Indian literature, and that's something that I would like for children today to change because I think there's so much more access to Indian children's literature, modern Indian children's literature beyond, say, the Panchatantra and the Jataka tales. I think there's a lot more access. So I would love for children today to explore modern literature coming out of India.
mm. And what are some of the genres that you were very fond of?
Interestingly, a genre that I'm not very fond of is mystery and murder, which is a very popular genre. But apart from that, I think I read a lot. Well, I'm also not very fond of horror. Horror is another genre that I don't read much. I don't read at all. And though I do read a lot of fantasy, I read a lot of adventure, realistic fiction. I'm willing to go as far as mystery sometimes, but I'm much more fond of reading about well developed characters than about well developed plots. So I really like stories which are character heavy. So I read a lot of verse novels. So I don't know if you've heard of verse novels, but verse novels are basically, instead of having chapters, you have poems as chapters. So then the whole novel is written in verse, and I write in verse as well. So I read a lot of verse novels, especially over the last couple of years. I've been reading that a lot.
Mm, that's lovely. And could you share some experiences of publishing your first book? I mean, your journey so far has been incredible. So that stepping stone for you, how has it been, the experience?
In some ways, I think my first book, The Story Catcher, will always be close to my heart. It is a collection of short stories, and I wrote it over a course of several years, in fact, and it was published in 2012, so now 13 years ago. It's been a long time, and if I had to write those stories again, I would write them very differently. But of course, it was a huge milestone. Rejection is part of any writer's journey, and I think that that process of accumulating rejections never ends. You send out a story and an editor may not like it, they may say that it's not for them. Sometimes you get feedback, sometimes you don't. So it's a long journey. So the story catcher also accumulated its fair share of rejection. So when it was finally accepted and it came out in the world, it was really a matter of celebration. And it was something that I was very happy about. And I'm glad that it's still in print and that people are still reading it. I love that.
Sounds like that was a lot of mental strength. I mean, you do not know who the editor is or you don't know who the illustrator is. I just had a talk with Miss Devika Karyappa, and she was also kind of frustrated. Most of her works were being turned down. What are some of the experiences that you had? Very fond ones there. You really wanted this book to be published, but couldn't really go through.
So I think the story catcher was so long ago, and I think when we're younger, we kind of accept it much more easily, and are like, okay, we write another, and I'll write another. But what I would say is what keeps me going is when I get a rejection for a book. In some ways, of course, it makes a big impact, but in other ways, you're already working on something else, and that's something that keeps me going. That okay, this is not happening, but I'm working on something else. Maybe that one will be better, and maybe that will find readers a little bit faster. But it's a really long journey. For example, Sisters at New Dawn, which is lying right on top over here.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was 7 years or 8 years from the time I wrote it to the time that it finally came out. So it's a long journey in terms of writing, editing. For several of my books, not for Sisters, but for several of my books, the pandemic came in the way. So, for example, Red Eyes, which I wrote in about 2016, 2017, was accepted for publication in 2018 and it came to India in January 2024. So it's 6 years from the time that it was accepted to the time that it was actually available to readers in India. So this is often off-putting, it's often depressing, it's often angering, but there really isn't much that you can do about it except, well, be patient.
I mean, that's wonderful. And how do you ensure that your stories, such as the Sisters of New Dawn, connect with the younger audiences?
Oh, the Sisters at New Dawn is a great example in terms of that because there's this scene where one of the prefects threatens it's a story that deals with cyberbullying as well, and one of the prefects threatens to share on Facebook. I think is what I'd written, and a young reader told me, well, no, only old people are on Facebook, and I'm like, yes, a prefect would not threaten to put work on Facebook or cyberbully on Facebook, and so, well, I needed to change that to social media, make it a little bit more general, or maybe I've written Instagram. I can't quite remember. But the important thing for me is that I'm constantly in touch with young readers and young writers. I run writing programs, I run book clubs. So, on a daily basis, I'm dealing with children between the ages of 7 and 14. And this is pretty much my target age group. I do deal with older, with teenagers as well, which helps. So 15 to 17 is another writing program that I've run in the past. And the fact that I'm constantly in touch with them, reading their writing, understanding how their minds work in some ways, is really useful to me as a writer because it helps me to connect with them when I write my stories.
And I know that, I mean, we all know that you have a really busy schedule every day. Does this sort of hinder your time to write new books or write new stories?
I think something that we often forget when it comes to writing is that it's in equal parts inspiration and discipline.
Mm.
Um, it's about a discipline. It's about building a discipline around writing. For example, if you look at today, I got into the school say at 9:30, which means that I left the hotel at like 8:40. But I write before that.
Mm.
So I write in the morning. It's not a day that I miss out on in terms of my writing. And sometimes when you're not inspired, maybe you won't write something new, but you can work on something that you've done before, reread it, work on it, edit it. So I'm not someone who writes every day, but I do try to make the time to work on something every day. And it's the discipline that matters for me.
Mm. That's actually incredible. And is it challenging for you? I mean, compared to previous times and at the current present moment, where all these new technological terms and all these new apps or technologies being introduced, is it kind of challenging to incorporate that into your story writing?
I love technology, so I'm going to say no, it's
No.
not. I think it's quite exciting to see what children are using. Exciting to see what apps they're on. For example, recently I learned about the fact that a lot of people are on something called Be Real, which I hadn't heard of at all. So I looked it up, and it's fun. It's fun. I think it's great to keep up to see what AI has in store for us. Of course, it's frightening. Of course, we do end up wondering what will happen to creativity. But AI is fun as well. And I do have students who use AI to write their work, and then I have to challenge them and see, well, what is the point of writing if you're going to use AI to submit your assignments? So this is something that I enjoy. I absolutely enjoy it. I love how technology challenges us and makes us grow.
You're the first person this week to actually support technology. Um, anyways, do personal experiences really influence your story? I mean, throughout your entire lifetime,
Always.
always.
Always. So
Could you
this is
share
one of
some
the
of
things
this?
about my sister and me. If you
Hmm.
look at the dedication, it's dedicated to my sister Nisha. And the two sisters, Padma and Kanagi, they're very inspired by my
Okay.
sister and me, pretty much.
Hmm.
Clockwala's Clues, which is the second book in this pile,
Hmm.
it's inspired by a place that I've visited, which exists in Pune, where I live. So there's a place called Kolsa Gully, which is a fascinating place with tiny little shops, and there's a clock shop, a framing shop, a key shop, and all of these things have kind of come into the story as well. The prophecy of Rasphora there is inspired by journeys from Mumbai to Pune, because the Western Ghats, especially in the monsoon, are beautiful. And I often found myself thinking, what lies behind those waterfalls? And that's what led to Rasphora. So, pretty much every book, Red Eyes is one which is inspired by visits to the jungle. Um, Fishbowl is about a friend's struggle, particularly with mental health, with therapy, and each book, in some ways, is very, very inspired by things that have happened around.
I mean, you've mentioned previously that some figures like the librarian that you had, I mean, she has influenced you, or she has actually developed an interest for you in writing. What are some of the authors that you actually looked up upon that made you like, you know, copy their style or try to influence your style in writing?
So I think at different stages of life, different people have influenced my style of writing. And I also think that we can never be fully aware of our influences. So because I've been writing a lot in verse, I've also been reading a lot of verse novels. I've been reading Sarah Crossan. I've been reading Lisa Phipps. I also make these lists of books that I loved each year. And this year, 6 out of 10 books that I really loved last year were novels in verse. So all of these writers influence me, and I think that some of them influence me more openly because I pay attention. For example, Catherine Applegate is someone who crafts her opening line and closing line with great care, and this is something that has actually influenced the way in which I look at my own work, in which I read my work and edit it. And there are others who kind of subtly influence you, and you won't even know how.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I don't want to bore you with any more questions. Just to end things off for today, what advice do you have for the aspiring young writers?
Keep at it.
Keep at it.
I think that's it because, like you were saying, even Devika says, manuscripts are turned down. Think about what you're out there to create. Write about something that you're passionate about. Try to find your own voice. Yes, you're inspired by so many other people, but keep at it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Miss Session, for sharing your inspiring journey and your invaluable insights. Your passion for storytelling and commitment to engaging young readers are truly admirable. We wish you all the best in the future endeavors and look forward to more amazing stories from you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was wonderfully done.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.